Yeah. Look. Everyone has said liberal and conservative alike. He's only being prosecuted because he's Donald Trump and because he's a Republican candidate. So it's not like he's above the law. He's below the law, right? That's what's going on here. Is that they're treating him worse.
Hello and welcome to the Alan Film Scoop. I'm Phelan McAleer.
And I'm Anne McElhaney.
So yes, we're still in New York, which in addition to being the home of our incredible October 7th play, will also be known as the first place to convict a former president with a sham trial. We have the perfect guest coming on the show to help us understand the standards, the double standard, the triple standards, and the dubious legal process behind the persecution and prosecution of Donald J. Trump. And our play about telling the truth about October 7th is running in New York City. We look at the newfound allies of the left, the pro-Palestinians.
And we have a very nice, very nice heartwarming story of two friends who, I don't even want to say too much, but anyway, two friends who reunited because of an interview we did with Bo Snerdley. And anyway, you'll get a little of that, a taste of that later on.
And a very special guest attend one of our performances. It's an incredible surprise, and the actress was surprised as well. So abortion is going to be a big issue in this cycle, and we look at the latest billionaire philanthropist. Actually, it's wrong. The billionaire ex-wife, the ex-wife of a we'll talk about that. So let's see what money's coming into that argument. And California is leading the fight against parental rights in favor of trans madness and mutilation. Science doesn't matter in the Golden State when we have the ideology. And leftism really does destroy everything. Wait until you hear of the destruction of a venerable organization that brought joy to so many people, which is why I suppose it had to be destroyed. So we're going to start off, we're going to go straight to the interview actually, because Mark Paoletta will be able to sum up the Trump trial better than us.
Yes, and he's a dear friend of this program
show.
And of the Unreported Stories
He's
Society.
A lawyer, served in many administrations, and he was Chief Counsel to Mike Pence, and he was Chief Counsel to the Office of Management and Budget. But let's go over to that interview that we recorded just before we came on air. So we're joined now by our friend Mark Paoletta. Mark is a lawyer who has served in George H.W. Bush and Donald Trump's administrations, including as Chief Counsel of the Office of Management and Budget from 2018 to 2021, which is a very powerful position in the administrations where all the money comes from. And during his time as counsel for President George Bush, he played a key role in the successful confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. You could call him the Clarence Thomas Whisperer. Mm-hmm. He knows more about that case than most people have forgotten. He's currently a partner at a law firm in Washington, D.C., practicing in the area of congressional investigations. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Phelan, thanks for having me, Anne. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Great to see you, Mark.
So, Mark, thanks for coming on. First of all, I want you to explain to us in layman's terms what Donald Trump has been convicted of. And related to that, if we have to ask two intelligent, informed people...
Average intelligence.
Have to ask... and this is one of the most covered court cases on the planet. If we have to ask, what has this man been convicted of, can we be certain that the jury understood the case as well?
Yeah, I'll try. It is one of the biggest miscarriages in weaponization of justice that I've ever seen. I'm not a criminal defense lawyer, but I've been a lawyer for a long time and watched these things. In layman's terms, right, Donald Trump was convicted of 34 counts, and those 34 counts are, I think, in terms of the numbers, related to bookkeeping. The original charge was bookkeeping violations, essentially, and so that's essentially what he was convicted of, was 34 counts of bookkeeping. Those 34 counts make up invoices that were submitted, payments that were made, and ledgers, record keeping notations in the record books that I think was 11 counts of checks, 11 counts of invoices, and 12 counts of bookkeeping.
Yes.
The the travesty, as you asked about what is it, is that there is no crime here, and what happened here has never been done, and even liberal commentators have said that. And it goes like this. Again, this is a case. I'll go through the specifics, but it really is this. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Yeah. This was an effort to get Donald Trump and to destroy Donald Trump and prevent him from being the next president of the United States. Okay, yeah. This has to do with allegations that the Trump organization entered into an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, with somebody who had made allegations that Donald Trump had an affair with her back in 2006. This is Stormy Daniels, right? Who's written filed affidavits saying this had never happened before. Yeah. That this is a lie. This is not true. She comes forward in the 2016 campaign, and like lots of other allegations against Donald Trump and other celebrities, right? There are NDAs where, payments are made so that people agree not to say what it is. One of those we understand during the trial was that Donald Trump had fathered a child with somebody else. Absolutely false. But I think they paid an NDA on that, right? Just because it's part of doing business, right? It's part of being a celebrity. Making false. So the argument is, the allegation was that Trump made these payments and then mischaracterized them as legal expenses for his for legal expenses, and that's only a 2-year statute of limitations. So if these payments were made as they were in 2017, so the payment was made in 2016. The reimbursements to Michael Cohen, who made the payment, were over these 11 payments in 2017. I think it was 2017, may have gone into 2018, but I think it was 2017. The misdemeanor charge of creating a false business record, only has a 2-year statute of limitations. So what Alvin Bragg did
can I just interrupt you there? So it's creating a false business record, but there's no implication that there was any tax evasion or anything related to that. It was actually false bookkeeping rather than
a mistake in the bookkeeping.
Well, no, I
think it's a perfectly fine. But he paid his lawyer for paying an NDA, right? So the Trump organization paid. I'm not even sure what Donald Trump knew, but the Trump organization paid Michael Cohen money, and he had paid Stormy Daniels. That you would think that's a legal payment, in terms of making a payment. Again, this is all so convoluted. It's tough to.
Exactly.
Honestly, Mark, you're giving me a headache here.
I
mean, I'm serious.
Let me just say, the allegation, the charge was that Trump. Here's the main problem. Alvin Bragg charged Donald Trump with this record-keeping violation, and he made it into a felony. By saying it was in furtherance of another crime.
Yes.
And in the indictment. Right, that other crime
wasn't mentioned.
Is not specified, which I think is a serious Sixth Amendment U.S. constitutional violation, because defendants have a right, and the Sixth Amendment says you have a right to know the nature and cause of the violation, of the wrongdoing. And when you say you made a false business entry in furtherance of another crime, and you don't specify that crime in the indictment, that is automatically a problem. Now, legally, right? They go through the entire trial never saying what this other crime is, right?
Yes.
People speculating. It turns out it's another New York statute that says it's unlawful to, it is a crime to use unlawful means to influence an election, and so the predicate crime is, in terms of what are those unlawful means that you use to commit this second crime, right? So false bookkeeping record keeping in furtherance of another crime, which is to interfere with an election, right? Through unlawful means. What are those unlawful means? They never presented any evidence on that. And what the judge said, and what Bragg comes up with in his closing argument, right, or the Bragg team, is that it could have been a federal election violation, a state, a federal tax violation, or the circular, this was a record keeping violation. And so it is, in my view, sort of Fifth Amendment due process violations, Sixth Amendment violations that Donald Trump did not know what he was being accused of through this entire trial.
Yeah,
and with respect to, I think what Alvin Bragg has said is that this was an effort to interfere with the 2016 election, right? So that unlawful means is to violate the federal election laws, right? And Judge Merchan did not let Donald Trump present an expert witness to say why a payment of an NDA, because that's what this is, right? This a payment for a non-disclosure agreement that you would have done regardless of whether you're running for president, right? I think, celebrities, Donald Trump, others have paid NDAs irrespective of whether you're in a political campaign. So it is not a campaign expenditure. He didn't use campaign funds. He used his own funds to make this payment. And so Judge Merchan would not let Brad Smith, foremost election law lawyer, to testify about why this was not an election violation. So in terms of those unlawful means, if you go from the first bookkeeping, charge, false entries, I don't think there was any false entry, to in furtherance of this election interference through unlawful means, there's nothing there too.
Yes.
And as the judge said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
I mean, by the way, sorry, has something like this, has a charge like this ever, has anything ever like this happened before anywhere in a court of law in America? No.
And in fact, no. And in fact, I think a CNN legal commentator had said that he's looked across the country. There's never been a state prosecution, right, where the predicate crime, which is this violating federal election law, has ever been used, ever in history, right? And so the federal election laws, right, are enforced by who? The federal government, right? There's the Federal Election Commission and there is the Department of Justice. Both of those agencies passed on, going after Donald Trump for these payments. Yes. It was clearly not a violation of federal law. It was not a violation of federal election law. So what Alvin Bragg was doing, right, was saying in his argument that Trump committed a federal election law violation, right, which the agencies that interpret and apply and enforce those laws have said is not a violation. Now, here's what's really, really egregious in terms of when you talked about the jury and whether they would understand this. What Judge Merchan did, and we should, your viewers should know, Judge Merchan in 2020, so I think he went on the bench in 2009, as a federal judge, he contributed 3 times to Joe Biden campaigns. One of them, he designated the money to stop Trump. It was like a fund. That's it. So in 2020, July of 2020, he made 3. They're small donations, but it doesn't matter. It's your state of mind. He hates Trump. He's against Trump. He thinks Trump is a threat. Why he didn't recuse, I do think this is going to be another one of these issues on appeal where it will rule that he should have recused and he was a biased judge on this. But what Judge Merchan did, though, in terms of the federal election law thing, he wouldn't let Brad Smith testify about why it's not a federal election violation, right? And then he allowed Michael Cohen, right? So Michael Cohen, we can go on, Michael Cohen, serial liar, convicted perjurer, lies to everybody under the sun. And so he, when he was charged by the Department of Justice several years ago with banking and tax fraud charges, he was pleading guilty, and they tacked on a election campaign violation for making these payments. Okay. Now, when you plead guilty to something like that, that isn't evidence that it's that he violated the law. You can't use that against a defendant, right? He has his own reasons for pleading. It's not evidence that it is that the crime was committed. And so when they introduced Michael Cohen in this trial, they allowed him to say, yes, I pled guilty to election law violations, and I went to jail for it. I did this on behalf of Donald Trump. I made this payment to help influence the election. I made this. He said all these things that are very, very prejudicial. The judge then would give an instruction to the jury, like, you can't use the evidence of his guilt for this election violation against Donald Trump. Okay. Judge Merchan and the prosecutors were clearly trying to paint for the jury that, hey, this guy went to jail for making these payments that was a violation of campaign finance, federal campaign finance laws, right? That was sort of the bait and switch of how it was, confusing for the jury, in my opinion. And the other one was David Pecker, who was the head of the National Enquirer at the time, who had made payments to another person who had made these allegations, Karen McDougal, called Catch and Kill Story. So he had entered into what's called a non-prosecution agreement on a sort of campaign finance election law too. So they allowed, when Pecker came in to testify, they also went over this thing that, yes, I entered into this non-prosecution agreement for campaign election violations. It has nothing that is not probative of all of whether, in fact, it was.
So I just want to take you back to the complication of the charges and all that. So as I say, it was giving me a headache listening to you. Nothing personal there, Mark. But let's imagine it did happen and it's an offence. Does the fact that almost no one would have known it was an offence, like that it's so convoluted that it's very likely that everyone who was involved in it, let's say it happened exactly as they say, is that a defence that a reasonable person wouldn't have known it was against the law? That that even a reasonable lawyer wouldn't have known that the A, B, and C was so complicated that you couldn't have known action A was that.
Right. Look. A key component of criminal law is that you have to prove willfulness, right? Yes. That you willfully violated the law. There's no evidence that Donald Trump knew, that any of the I think Michael Cohen made the payments, worked it out with the Trump organization. I don't know what Donald Trump knew. We know what Michael Cohen, a serial liar, claims. Yeah. But in terms of making these payments, he's made payments his whole life with respect to NDAs. You wouldn't think that's violating a campaign law. And in fact, it's not. Again, not to go back to the Brad Smith, it is not a campaign election violation to enter into an NDA during an election. Even if it were, if you would make a payment irrespective of whether you were in a campaign, then it's not a campaign election violation. And So they didn't prove willfulness. Donald Trump, even if all of this happened, right, it is not a violation. And second, you would have to still prove willfulness, and nobody's proved willfulness here. Yeah. So you intended to violate this law. So
there's obviously an incredible amount of grounds for appeal. I mean, on all kinds of levels. I mean, we're hearing multiple from you. But is he going to prison? I mean, what's the timetable now? What's the schedule now?
The conventional wisdom is that he's not, right. But surely it's a real possibility. There's 34 convictions of a felony, and given that he, you can make the argument he's the president, he should have known better. He's been in business, he knows the law. Couldn't Merchan send him to prison? I mean, shouldn't an example be made of someone who should know better? What do you think the chances are? I mean, I think this judge is capable of anything.
I don't think he's going to go to prison. But this judge has been, in my view, determined to rule against Trump in every way along the way, and allow the prosecutor to make these charges without having to back them up, essentially, and hide the ball throughout the entire trial. With this sentencing is July 11th. And with somebody with this type of, these charges and convictions and all that stuff, age, all that, first time, President Trump should not be going to prison while he appeals this. And so, I don't know what happens, Phelan, in terms of that sort of thing. I think you'd appeal it immediately. He is a candidate for president of the United States, and there has to be some some legal issues that are completely unique to that, and whether locking up a presidential candidate as part of your,
Sorry, Mark. Are you suggesting that rich people, or that a way to get out of jail is to run for president? That's a terrible precedent. I'm just saying that these are arguments that you could make.
Look. Everyone has said, liberal and conservative alike, he's only being prosecuted because he's Donald Trump and because he's a Republican candidate. So it's not like he's above the law. He's below the law, right? That's what's going on here. Is that they're treating him worse, right? You look at the statistics in New York. Alvin Bragg, I think it's like 60% of felonies he's reduced to misdemeanors, right? New York is awash in crime. People being killed, people being raped, people being beaten up, and all these horrible things. And he lets these criminals out free, no bail, just release right away. And here he is taking what everyone agrees was a misdemeanor, bookkeeping violation. Remember, Hillary Clinton in the 2016 campaign had done again, one of the biggest scandals, and I hope when President Trump gets reelected, he will look into this. But the whole Crossfire Hurricane and the Russian collusion, right? Yep. She paid for this dossier, right, and listed it on her election payments as a legal payment, right? Yep. And it was opposition research. So she made a false statement in her election filings, okay? And the FEC looked at it and fined her $8,000, and the DNC something significantly more, the Democrat National Committee, right? Yeah. So there is a case where, a presidential candidate committed an election violation and fined her. They didn't send her to prison. They didn't prosecute her. And
I think this needs to be looked at with these fresh eyes.
I think it's interesting, Mark. You made a point earlier that I thought is worth highlighting. It's interesting that even some very progressive, very liberal, very Democrat supporting commentators, legal expert commentators, have said this is appalling. No, hang on, just to make a point there. I don't think any politician, though, no Democrat politician has objected to what happened in New York. Am I right about that?
I haven't looked at all the news, and in terms of surveyed all, like the presidential, Democrat candidates for the Senate and some of in the red states where people are outraged. You saw the fundraising totals come in with new Trump supporters. Yeah. I mean, I do think this is a crossing the Rubicon moment. Yes. I do think that the world is going to change as a result of this. Yes. And I do think actually it will spur Donald Trump to be reelected. Yeah, totally. As president, because this is the most vicious weaponization of the criminal justice system. Remember, not to go back to, a Biden official, the number 3 person in the Biden administration in the Justice Department, the position that Neil Gorsuch had under Bush 43, went to Alvin Bragg's office to help lead this charge against Donald Trump. So this is all, in my view, very coordinated. It's an effort to weaponize the law to take Trump out so that he can't run for president.
But it hasn't. And on that very point, though, it hasn't been effective. Though, I mean, it hasn't. This move hasn't wiped him out. Is that correct? From an electoral point of view.
That's right. And you're seeing all these crazy legal arguments made to try and stop him. And I'll just say, I don't mean to keep jumping around. Tish James, the Attorney General of New York, she ran for office to say, "I will get Donald Trump," and she used some curse words along with that. Right? Nice. Who did she promise to go after? Donald Trump and the National Rifle Association. Right? She went after the National Rifle Association and the Supreme Court 9-0 just crushed her case in the Supreme Court when it got up to the Supreme Court. She went after Trump on that civil trial, right, on the Trump Organization, and got some ungodly amount of money to try and bankrupt him, $450 million fine, right? These are all efforts that when they get up to the Supreme Court, and maybe higher in the New York system, they all get slapped down, just like the 14th Amendment, Section 3, to disqualify Trump from the ballot in Colorado and Maine, right? So 9-0, that crazy legal theory was slapped down. Here, what they wanted to do is get a Trump conviction. I think that Alvin Bragg, I think that Juan Merchan, the Judge Merchan, made so many rulings to show his bias to actually allow this to be where you get a conviction right before the election, so that the Democrats can call Donald Trump a convicted felon. That's what this is about.
Yeah, so they can call him a convicted felon. Yeah, I mean, I think we have to go shortly, Mark. But I think that's and I think that might be a reason why Joe Biden doesn't have to debate Donald Trump, which is a big fear of the Democrats. Is Joe Biden 3 hours on a debate is saying, I won't debate with a convicted felon. So that might be something that they'll use.
He won't do that. He's going to show up.
Wow.
There's so many questions about Joe Biden's cognitive ability. He has to show up. And people think this is, Donald Trump he's already agreed to it. He was in the middle of this trial. So if he did that, I think it will blow up in Joe Biden's face even more.
Well, on that note, listen, we wanted to talk to you about the whole Supreme Court and trying to delegitimize the Supreme Court. And just very briefly, there's obviously all these calls for people to recuse because they fly various flags, which are not what the people say they are. Tell us about some of the egregious conflicts of interests in the past that these commentators are overlooking.
Yes, intentionally overlooking.
So again, this is all, the whole effort is the weaponization of the law to go after, Donald Trump, go after the justices, the Supreme Court justices. And they come up with these invented recusal standards. I pointed out that Ruth Bader Ginsburg trashed Donald Trump in the 26 campaign, said she'd moved to, I think, New Zealand, said he was a faker, and that he was terrible for not releasing his taxes, right? These are her words, not her husband's words, not somebody else's words, her words. And she never recused from a Trump campaign or Trump administration case when she was on the Supreme Court, including Trump v. Mazar, which had to do with Trump not having a subpoena to release his taxes to Congress, which he was arguing he shouldn't have to do. She sat on that case, clear bias. She signed an autographed opinion of the VMI case, which it struck down single-sex colleges, the Virginia Military Institute, and she gave that opinion to the National Organization of Women to use for a fundraiser to raise money. It's a pro-abortion group, right? So she's clearly aligning herself with those groups, and she never recused from those sorts of cases, abortion cases or cases that now filed in. So the left has zero problem with Ruth Bader Ginsburg on actual or much closer to the line recusal issues. Her husband's law firm appeared numerous times before the Supreme Court. She never recused from any of those cases. And so the list goes on and on and on. This is an effort to undermine the Supreme Court because it's the first time in 50, 60 years that the court hasn't been controlled by the left. And so the left wants to destroy the Supreme Court as a result.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, we could talk all day, unfortunately
we've come to the end. But this has been great, and we're really grateful for your time, Mark. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Alan.
Take care.
Bye. Oh, how can people get you, Mark? On what?
Oh, sure. At Mark Paoletta is on X, and then I have a website, markpaoletta.com, where I have a lot of op-eds and some like congressional testimony and my book. I'm the co-editor of Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in His Own Words, which will be actually published in paperback on June 4th.
Oh, excellent.
And it's a wonderful book if you want to get to know more about our greatest justice and our greatest living American, Clarence Thomas.
Thank you. I'm really glad. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because people would want to get the book. Yeah. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Bye.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Alan.
We could talk to Mark for a very long time. I just feel like we only got started there, actually. And I didn't think we got enough of the double standards of the Supreme Court, which is a huge target for the left to try to destroy. Just because, it's really funny. You play a game, and the minute you start losing, you say that the game was rigged, or that the game, it doesn't work at all. That's why they want to, they want to
change the rules.
They want to change the rules.
Yeah. So speaking of things the media got wrong, we're still trying to get the truth out about the October 7th attack on Israel. Our play October 7th is running for a few more weeks in New York until June 16th. If you haven't seen it, you really should. If you can't make it to New York, please consider donating to help us cover all the costs, including the extensive security costs. It's the only play in New York that needs police protection at every performance. The play is going well. Crowds.
People really, I mean, that's one of the most wonderful parts of this, I suppose, given all the work that we did to get to this place, is to stand outside. So Philip and I, if you're coming to New York, just so you know that we'll be standing outside at the beginning of the play, and we're outside meeting everyone after the play. And I have to say, it's you're always amazed. Obviously we think the play is fabulous, but to be standing outside and watch people come out and talk to people coming out and have such complete and a completely unanimous verdict, basically, yes, on the play, on how effective it is, how powerful it is. Let's just watch one very quick. I wanted to just quickly. We mentioned this story earlier. So Bo Snerdley did an interview with Phelim and I, and a woman who was listening, it made her remember a really dear friend of hers that she hadn't seen for 47 years. So have a look at this.
So I was listening to Bo Snerdley, James Golden last weekend, and I heard yourself and the other playwright, he was interviewing you. And I knew I wanted to come because this is a travesty. This was Israel's September 11th. And I don't wish that on anybody. And so I reached out to my friend, Yvonne, who I haven't seen in 40-something years. We went to camp together, and we went to an all-Jewish camp, only I'm not Jewish. And so the girls had various nicknames for me, and so I've always been like the honorary Jew. So we've kept in touch through Facebook and stuff all these years. So I said, "Do you want to go?"
And so I, of course, said yes. I actually live in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I came here for the day. And I've actually been to a lot of the locations. We actually have a home in Israel. And so I went to the Gaza envelope about 3 weeks ago, did a tour. And it is just, the way it's unbelievable, but the way the actors have described everything, and it truly was really in their own words. It was not exactly, it wasn't what I expected, even though I knew it was going to be in their own words. But it was just such a travesty, and they really captured everything so well. The feeling of what it's like to be in Sderot, in the Gaza envelope, in these kibbutzim, and it was really an amazing play. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, so that's what a nice story. What an amazing story! I just love that.
But anyway. Another amazing story, as on the opening night with one of the survivors, Shani, who came to her story is being portrayed on stage by Jenny, the actress, and we interviewed them on the podcast. And then we had another survivor come, whose story is told on stage, Tal Shimoni. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. So at the end, we surprised the actress. Tal was in town for the Nova exhibition. If you're in New York,
you should definitely go and see
the Nova exhibition.
Playing, and the Nova exhibition is exactly the same amount of time as us. Yeah. They close on June the 16th, same day as us.
Let's watch Tal surprise the actress. We'll play that video now.
Everyone should film this. Yes, get your phones out. Thank you for coming, Paolo. I hope, I don't know, we honored your words or the memory of the people.
I'm really amazed by that. I need time to digest. Also, the bullet sounds out of my body.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming and watching this and witnessing my stories. Thank you for processing my subject to whom I met in the exhibition. Thank you for doing this, because we know it's really hard to be in the stories again and again and again. And what you're doing here is big and important to the world, tell the truth. And thank you for honoring Leon Bob. He's a hero. He saved many of my friends. And just thank you.
So, Melinda Gates, is
Yeah,
apparently...
she just wrote. Yeah, Melinda Gates has just written an essay for the New York Times, basically pledging that all of her billions, that she has billions of dollars, and that basically she's going to pledge billions of dollars to expand abortion rights. She actually thinks that the pro-life side are far too successful.
That's right, and overfunded.
And overfunded, by the way, which is
yes.
complete nonsense, given the fact that we know the numbers of
Yes.
what was spent in Ohio.
Yes.
So,
In
but just
Ohio,
twice the amount.
Oh, twice
The amount
yeah.
was spent by the pro-abortion side.
Yeah. So anyway, she's going to give her ex-husband's billions to...
I don't think that's altogether fair to say that, by the way. I don't think he did it all on his own. And I think that's fair to say, and not being a feminist or anything, but I actually think it's fair to say that actually she was fairly tightly involved with what he was doing.
Oh, yeah?
I think so. But people can correct me. I
Well,
don't think she was sitting at home. I don't think she sat at home making sandwiches or scones. I do think she was involved. But maybe I can be. I'm open to being.
quote Hillary
I'm
Clinton, sat at home baking cookies.
I'm totally open to being corrected
Well,
on that.
if anyone knows, there's a book about the beginnings of Amazon. I might go and have a look at it and see.
Anyway, one of the paragraphs in the essay that she wrote for the New York Times says, when we allow this cause to go so chronically underfunded, the abortion, by the way, the pro-abortion, chronically underfunded, I don't think so. We all pay the cost, and shocking as it is to contemplate, my 1-year-old granddaughter may grow up with fewer rights than I had. Well, guess what? Isn't it great, though, that she does get to grow up?
Yes.
Yeah,
As opposed
you're
to
very
being-
lucky, yeah, that she didn't get murdered when she was completely defenseless.
Yes.
Anyway, over to you, Philip.
Yes. So anyway, look, you could spend a whole podcast talking about California madness. They're now going to introduce legislation where schools are not obliged to tell parents if their children are transitioning at school. And of course, we know the schools encourage this, so they're going to keep secrets from parents. Great, remember that was the whole thing: don't keep secrets about child abuse. And now the thing is, you got to keep secrets from the parents.
But part of this legislation that they're going to change in California, this was one slight detail of it that I thought really needs to be highlighted. They want to change the law in California so that if you're a person who's involved in the medical community and any part of what you're going to be planning to do with your career helps this gender affirming, as in double mastectomies and creating eunuchs out of boys. If you say you're going to do that, they're going to expedite. They're going to create a law to expedite your medical license to make it all much more seamless, much faster, so that you can quickly get to where you will be cutting off the healthy limbs of little boys and girls.
Wonderful. So this story, Anne, I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
I know, he's got a surprise story at the end that he wants my reaction to.
So the Romance Writers of America,
the
group, has declared bankruptcy.
That's not shocking at all to me, because they've forgotten about romance.
Well,
that would be my suggestion.
Where do you hear how much they've forgotten about romance? And, this is written, of course, in a very oblique, you have to read between the lines. Before 2019, the Romance Writers of America had 10,000 members, but membership has dropped to about 2,000. Why would that be, Anne?
Shocking. I wonder why.
So they said it was threatening their commitments. They couldn't have all the conferences, because all these conferences, people love going to the conferences. And what happened in 2019, the Romance Writers of America reconstituted its board, cancelled its 2020 awards program, and pledged to improve its record on diversity. After it suffered backlash for ousting a board member who criticised other writers' works for containing negative racial stereotypes. In other words, they racialised it and made it political.
They DEI'd it and just changed those letters around, and they dyed it.
Yes.
They killed it, basically.
And of course, no one wants to be lectured when you're reading or writing
Correct.
a romance novel.
You'd like to escape the wokeism when you're reading your romance.
But shockingly, so they renamed the award to their big award for some editor of color. They stopped writers from containing negative racial stereotypes. And then the next line, I love this line: these changes fail to prevent further criticism. In other words, they feed the beast,
and the beast will never be satisfied.
And the organisation. When the organisation gave an award to a historical romance novel with a protagonist who took part in the 1890 massacre at the Battle of Wounded Knee. I think it's called a battle.
Yeah, yes. Not the great father now for a romance novel, though, I wouldn't have thought.
Well, I think he was a dashing cavalry officer, I'm sure.
I'm sure he was.
Yes. Anyway, they rescinded the
So
award.
are you saying that the romance novelists of America, diversity is not their strength?
No, it actually...
Diversity did not prove to be their strength.
Diversity destroyed them. Or actually being lectured about diversity and being told... Actually,
Hectoring doesn't seem to be very appealing.
Being told you're a racist doesn't make you want to go to a conference.
No.
People stopped wanting to go to the conference because they were told that enjoying romance novels was now a racist activity. So they said,
I think
I'll pass.
Yeah.
And they ran out of money. So that's it for today. Please go to October7theplay.com.
Please
buy
come
tickets.
to the... So please come to the play, by the way. If you can't come to the play, please donate. And actually, we have an existential issue with the donations. People do really need to donate because we can't continue to do this work if we aren't funded by you. Yes. And you have been so good in the past. So please be good again and really do think about that. And we are a 501c3. We are a not-for-profit. So you do get a tax deduction for donating to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye.